All right, we are live for another episode. And on today's episode, I interview a former professional volleyball player, a former teacher, who is now a self-love coach, guiding others back to the truth of themselves so they can live their holy yes. Welcome to the Winner Circle, Natalie Reimer Anderson.
Thank you, Derek. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat with you. I know you from the yoga community. I taught you long ago
Yeah.
at a hot yoga studio, and I'm just seeing you doing amazing things in the community and in the social media world and as a coach. And I'm just excited to share your story, to uplift, inspire, and empower everyone tuning in. And that's really the goal of these conversations. And the first conversation sets us up as such, and that is, what do you love about your world right now? Not about all the
Yeah.
chatter and the external, but what do you love about your personal world right now, Natalie?
Oh man, I first of all, I love that question. I love being asked that question. I love the way you phrased it, just this idea of in your world. Because I think one of the things that I'm enjoying most about being here and being embodied in this time and space is just trying on for size fully that idea of being here as a conscious and powerful creator of this reality that we are experiencing as a collective, but also as an individual. So when you say my world, yes, like just this idea that the world is an outpicturing of everything that I perceive it to be, and within our own perception and our own observation of the world, we are actually affecting it quantumly. So I'm super excited about playing with that idea of like, as wild a ride the rest of the world is, that I have a very significant role to play here in cultivating my own world, my own inner world, which then is outpictured and experienced by the collective. In other words, this idea of voting for a timeline that I would like to see, and just the feeling of purposefulness that gives, rather than this powerlessness that I think a lot of us are experiencing with the situation the way that it is currently.
I really admire that viewpoint, that lens. How did you come upon this lens? When did this lens come into your being?
Hmm. Well, I think I have always had an upbringing where I was raised to know that we are more than just this physical body, but that it's through this physical body and this experience here in this dimensional reality that we're here to create. We're here to be embodied. And so I think that might have been a natural foray into why I loved sports so much, or my physicality so much, and expressed myself in that way. I was also, very, very shy growing up. So I think I spent a lot of time in introspection and was a very like quietly personal observer of what was going on around me, and moved around a lot when I was a kid. So it gave me even more opportunity to sort of, with each turn, reinvent myself and decide who I was going to be in this next iteration, in this next new place. So almost like reincarnating, but in this one life. And I think we all do that in our own way. We reinvent ourselves, even just through our day-to-day evolution and growth. So it's not unique to me, but I think I was lucky enough or blessed enough to have had that experience of having to transplant myself and then leave the things that were not serving me, even at a young age, and bringing them, what I wanted to, forward into the next place where I lived. And so, it's interesting because I've never really talked about that before, as how I came to sort of understand myself in that way. But then I think through, putting my most of my energy and attention into being an athlete, it was when my body broke down and what I thought at the time was betrayed me, that I really recognized that I am so much more than this body, and that I'm an infinite being, as we've heard said before, a spiritual being having a human experience, and having to actually look at what that meant. And that's where my transformation really began.
Let's dig deep in there. So let's talk about, so you are a professional volleyball player and all Canadian, and then you're over in Europe playing professionally, living like the lavish lifestyle, um, and then your body broke down. So let's
Yeah.
get into that.
So, I come from a very hardworking immigrant family. Our answer to everything was just work harder. And, I applied that to my sport life and had much success with that until the day that I realized that my body was no longer responding in the way that I wanted it to. And I didn't know at the time, but I was suffering with an undiagnosed autoimmune condition. And even just the energetics of an autoimmune condition, right? This idea that the body is attacking itself. So, the psychosomatic or psychospiritual component of here I am, a person who has basically used my body to bring me the life that I wanted to. And even in that, it was still talking to me and telling me, you're close, but that ain't it. Right. So it had to be through this vessel that I experienced this awakening. Right. So in essence, my body was whispering to me, this is too much. You're going too hard. You're harming yourself. And then, I think my attitude was, well, just the next trophy, just the next award, just the next level will be enough. Then I'll be worthy. Then I will be enough. Then I'll have proven myself. And so at the end of it all, I had, this tower of trophies and this professional career, which was, envied by many. And all of that was precariously perched on this idea that that's what I had to do and earn to earn my love and approval. So this constant pursuit of never good enoughness that many people talk about was, it had to come crashing down. It had to, for me to really recognize that I have an inherent worth and value that had nothing to do with my performance on a court or how I could manipulate a volleyball.
Mm-hmm.
And once I stepped out of that identity, man, that was like dark night of the soul type stuff, where it's like, who even are you without this way of people identifying you? And so like being basically stripped down to the bare bones of who I am, and having to recognize that my value is not predicated on any of that. And so what I started to do was look at my belief systems, that whole concept of you have to work harder. And just work harder. In my case, it was the opposite of what I had to really be doing. So this long path to learning to love myself started when I got sick, and really had to look at who I was outside of all of the definitions that I had cleverly built for myself. Take off all those masks, and what are you left with? And come to a place of relationship with that, who that person is, and then grow from there. So all this time I had done of, curating who I was, reinventing myself, going to the next town, the next place, the next level. It's like, what is the essence of what I take with me when all my accomplishments are gone and long in the past, and not something I can source from for my own self-worth?
Mm-hmm. So let's continue to peer into this dark night of the soul. How long did it take you to step out of that darkness and into your new self, into your new awareness? What did that phase of your journey look like?
Well, there was probably a couple of different situations where, there were these spontaneous turnarounds where it was like, oh, okay, that was important. That, and it's sort of these life-changing moments. And then since then, it's been gradual, but the few that I can point out are, so, you talk about the hero's journey. And for me, one of the things that I didn't always love about the story was the part where the helpers come along. because I always had this idea that one has to be like fiercely independent, and you have to go out and carve your way in the world. And so, you know, this idea of not looking for help and not asking for help or taking the help that's there. I'm happy to say that I've let go of whatever it is that made me believe in that idea. And so, you know, the instrumental figures that showed up in my life, I had these two friends who basically staged an intervention for me, because after I became sick, I was not aware of it. Yet they could see how much I had changed, because like I live in this body, and I knew that I was tired and I knew that I was depressed, but I don't think I knew to what extent. And so I continued to try to downplay it and to not like claim the illness, right? I didn't even want to say that I could potentially not be well. And so they staged this intervention. So they had it so that I was in the office of this intuitive medical doctor who took one look at me and he said, "I know what's wrong with you." And I was taken aback because it felt offensive. It was like, what's wrong with me? Right? I'm this like on the top of the world person right now. And I remember feeling like that weird sensation, right, of all the pins and needles, like the adrenaline just dropped. And he leaned in and he looked at me, and his eyes had so much compassion in them that was the first time I'd seen someone look at me like that. It wasn't pity either. It was like the nuance was different. It was like he believed in me. And he said, "You're suffering from toxic shame. And if you don't get to the bottom of this, it will kill you." Now imagine a white coated doctor saying this to you, right? Like it blew my mind. This was 20 years ago now. And I'd never heard anything like it before. And he said, "Can you be here tomorrow morning at 6 a.m.?" So he opened up his clinic for me. And I mean, this is not a man who needs my business. I've seen Sting leaving out the back door while I'm coming in the front door, you know, like you name it, Gwyneth Paltrow, like all these, not to say anything except to say that he saw me as just, we're all the same. They're no better, I'm no less. Whoever's in front of him is who he treats. So the fact that I got in front of him, and then the second part of that is, so I was there at 6 a.m. the next morning, ready to go. And he looked at me and he asked me this question: "Natalie, do you love yourself?" And I burst into tears. I actually surprised myself at how emotional I had become in that moment, because I knew that in that question was the answer to what I was experiencing. And that I knew that answer was no, I do not love myself. But that very question would be the solution to the mystery of why I was not well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that really started my journey. So, you know, as far as the hero's journey, whether that was the call to adventure or whether that was the helper coming along, at this point, it doesn't really matter, because it happened. And that was the pivot point for me to start on this path of seeking something more than just the physical body and my physical health. I knew that it had to come down to, what am I believing about myself? What is my inner dialogue that is affecting the way that my cells are responding in ease or dis-ease? And once I figured that out, it's just been a like clear trajectory since. It's not been easy, but it has been with that fundamental foundational principle in mind are all my decisions made from then on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So let's go back to this doctor's office when he says you are suffering from toxic shame. First of all, what is that? How would you define what that is, toxic shame? Toxic
Well,
shame would kill you, he said.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty intense statement to make. And I have to just say, to his defense, he said, I do believe you have Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is an autoimmune condition that affects the thyroid gland. So it sits in the throat chakra. So anyone that's familiar with the chakra system listening will know that this is our center of expression and creativity. And I had come from a tradition where I felt like, and many people will resonate with this, that idea of being seen and not heard, or don't say something, or think before you speak, or if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. So we're hyper regulating our own speech and self-censoring. And maybe a tradition where it was less about being allowed to be curious about things and ask questions about things, for fear of going against some kind of doctrine. So that was a big thing that I had to definitely inspect and overcome. But back to your question, could you ask that question again? Because I wanted to really answer that, and I went off on a tangent, but I felt it was really necessary.
Yeah, no, I was just curious for you to kind of define what toxic shame
Oh, yes.
means. Yeah, the doctor
Yeah.
said it's killing you, and
Yeah.
so
So thank you. I'm glad you asked that again, because so the toxic shame for me, what it means to me is, so shame isolates us. Shame has us. So when we've embodied shame, and I've heard it said really brilliantly, the difference between guilt and shame is guilt is saying, I have done something wrong or I've done something bad, and shame is, I am bad. So you live from that place of feeling like you are the problem, right? You're the common denominator in everything that's going wrong for you.
mm,
So when we look at it, at toxic shame, it to me, it's living from that place where you cannot be yourself. You're hiding, you're mired in this really dense low vibration, where you are doing everything you can and all your energy is going to not having to feel that feeling again. So we avoid situations, we avoid intimacy, we avoid relationships in life that ask us to be our authentic selves. And so shame is on the lowest end of the energetic spectrum, whereas authenticity, many people have been hearing this lately in these really great videos that have come out about people talking about authenticity being the highest expression of who we are and the highest energy, even above love and gratitude. Authenticity, which on the Maslow's hierarchy, it's quite similar, that at the top is self-actualization. And that is all about being fully oneself. Shame, opposite. It is about hiding oneself for fear of being ostracized, excluded, made fun of, shamed further. So
mm,
yeah, he really with that one statement set me on a course. And it's interesting because even this month, I've taught 3 workshops on shame and how to move shame out of our body. Because once it's in there, it's the toughest thing, because we hide from our own shame. So we know it's there, but we stuff it down and we don't want to look at it and we don't want to talk about it. And so, I mean, I applaud the people that have come forward to take the workshops and the retreats, because these are people that are willing to look at it. And that takes a tremendous amount of courage. So
mm,
if people are out there dealing with toxic shame right now, this is what I love to work with people through, because there is, coming from what I've come from, I have absolute unconditional love and acceptance for people for where they are, because so much of where we are is mired in that density of the shame vibration. And it's really hard to crack without that person, like that doctor was to me, who looks at you with compassion that pierces to the core of you, that you can't even hide from yourself anymore. And that's where the healing begins, in the being seen and heard in your truth, not in the masks that you wear because you want so badly to hide from yourself and to hide from others. And I believe, because this is how I found my own healing, that if there's one thing that we can offer the world for universal healing, it is to show up in our authenticity and to love ourselves, and therefore be able to love one another with that depth of humanity, that we are all in this together. And if shame is anything, it is a cry to be loved, not the opposite. It shows up as the opposite. We push people away. We fear intimacy. But authenticity asks us, our soul yearns to be known for who we are.
So the doctor talked about toxic shame. He identified that with you. And then he also brought into awareness that you didn't love yourself. How did the two go hand in hand, shame and self-love?
Yeah, well, I mean, the way I see it, when we are, I mean, it's hard to love oneself when we are dealing with that toxic shame. I mean, I can even just remove the word toxic, because shame itself, there has been a need of shame in the past to, especially keep us in line as tribal beings. There's some level of shame that helps people to course redirect. But the shame I'm talking about is that internalized shame. And so when we have that internalized shame, it's impossible to know oneself fully. You're fooling yourself by another cleverly cultivated mask and another one. Like I even see this in the spiritual community, and I know that I have done this myself. So it's not in terms of judgment, it's just a self-check, is even, speaking the right words and going to the right classes and knowing how to do all the yoga poses. It means nothing unless we're actually looking and doing the inner work to find that shame, to recognize what parts of ourselves that we have divorced, right, or fractured off, that we have divorced ourselves from, that, Jung called the shadow, that we need to integrate and love to wholeness. So they actually are so intimately connected, because you can't have self-love if you are just stewing in your own shame. You can't know yourself and love yourself if you keep denying and hiding parts of yourself, because our journey here is one to integration and wholeness.
So this got brought into your awareness, and then how did you start peeling away the layers and taking a look at your shadow? How did you find your shadow so that you could put it aside? You can not let it control you. So yeah, let's talk about delayering. Once you found that you had this shame and this problem of not being able to love yourself, how did you start removing the masks and the protective layers that you've accumulated to keep you safe?
I love that. I love that idea of delayering. Yeah, I called it an excavation process. So it was like digging down into those layers of subconscious subliminal programming from early childhood, including obviously looking at the beliefs that I held about myself. Where did those come from? Challenge them. Are they true? Quite literally trying on for size from day to day a new belief system. What if I believed this about myself? How does that show up differently? And because I came to know through the process that, my world, like you said, what is it in your world that you're loving, is like this idea that this is me starring in my own movie as you are yours, but I am not just the actor, the principal character. I am also the projector. I am also the observer. I am also, like, honestly, we're co-creating and co-writing scripts together where we move in and out of each other's movies. And so just this idea that whatever it is that I believe is what I will see. right? So believing is seeing, not seeing, believing. We've got it backwards. Whatever it is that I believe about myself, because, as you well know, we will go about like bad detectives collecting evidence to prove our beliefs true, even though they
Yeah.
aren't,
Mm-hmm.
and be judge, jury, and executioner before we even really give a different timeline or a different truth. It's just time. So starting to collect evidence to prove my new belief true. What if I do have inherent value? What if I am lovable? What if it's true that volleyball never made me who I am? I am who I am, and volleyball was something that helped me to cultivate experience and character and all these wonderful things that I am now able to look back with such gratitude for in my life. But had that not been the case, my spirit, my soul would have found another way of expressing itself and learning these lessons, some of them hard.
Yes. So you mentioned volleyball again, and that's something that was no longer serving you. It was such a huge piece of your life, but then there was a time to let it go.
Mhm.
Um, how was that process of not only letting go of volleyball, but of all the other things that didn't serve you as you chose to transform, as you chose to do that excavation
Mm.
and to find your true self rather than the self that you thought you had to be from your parents or your culture. Um, how did you let things go? How did that process look like? Was it easy? Was it hard?
Um, I mean, it's ongoing. I don't think I'd be here on planet Earth if there was no more work to do, right? As with all of us, like I think we're here for that fundamental purpose to integrate to wholeness. And I think for me, it's just applying the principles of like all is mind, right? The first law of the Kabbalion, and knowing that my energetic thought forms, where I place my intention and attention, is our most important currency in this prana economy that we exist in. And, even just like the principle of correspondence, looking at as above, so below, as within, so without. What can we control? I can control the as within, right? That is this is my real estate. This is my domain, the last indwelling place, right? Dominion, where the God spark exists in each one of us. And so for me, it was just starting to really see myself as this infinite being having a human experience, and what are all of these experiences for?
Mm-hmm.
If it's as within, so without, as above, so below, what am I encountering and creating here that is within my control? And how am I going to interpret that? And
Mm-hmm.
then what is my responsibility here? How am I
Mm-hmm.
to respond to that? That's within my capability. So I think it has just been a process of knowing and applying those lessons as I go. And I mean, honestly, in this last few years, it has led to nothing short of what I would call a magical existence. Like even the night where, I ran into you again after years of not seeing you, and you're like, hey, you should come on my podcast. Everything about these encounters that we're having is divine appointment. There is not one person that we will meet, there is not one conversation that we will have that will not have a massive impact, not only for our own self, but for the collective. Because once you step into seeing life this way, you become responsible,
Mm-hmm.
right? For everything that comes out of your mouth. We're speaking spells all the time. We're affecting the vibrations that we emit are affecting the reality that we see, and just really taking a concerted responsibility to guard what I like. Out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. Living from the heart, searching my heart for any unforgiveness that I have, for any grudges that I hold against myself or other, for the density of that shame vibration, for all of these things. And then using my privilege of being here and being awake and being conscious in this time to be able to go, what is my contribution here? And there's no way that you can ask those questions, how may I be of service, without it coming back to you, right? The vibrational boomerang.
Yeah.
Living from that place of service, which is the part that, the hero's journey, where you go home and you tell the others.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. How are you currently contributing and serving these lessons you've learned on your path? What does that look like for you these last years, which you've said has been magical?
Well, I mean, it's interesting, full circle moment. I'm taking great joy and pride in watching my sons play volleyball, and in being able to help them through those moments that, what is sport for but not to build character, right? Character, community, contribution, how you fit into the whole thing. How do you give your best to someone without attaching your value to it? So being able to reparent myself through them. And that's and I mean, using my throat chakra, screaming my head off, cheering for them in the stands it's pretty fun. And to me, it's like, okay, wow, this is a sign of my healing, of my having healed, because I was the shyest, most insecure young person, because I was dealing with so much of that fear and shame, that I think I found my way to sports so that I wouldn't be, so I could kind of hide out in the gym and try to chase that light. So that's one thing on a personal level, but on a professional level, or on what is my service to the world and how has that changed? I've coached now for almost 20 years. I love it. It's why I'm here. This is not something that is like, I can't wait to retire. There's no such thing for me, because this is so rewarding to be able to meet someone where they're at, and just even for a call or a moment or a longer phase in their life, help them through these stages to understand the power that they hold. So it's about asking questions, getting us thinking a different way, trying on new belief systems, collecting evidence to prove our new beliefs true, gnosis, right? Learning who we are. Well, I can't tell someone who they are, but I can help them ask the right questions so they can answer it for themselves. And then so that's private coaching, which I love. And then I'm doing group coaching as well. And I started something, I think we're going on month 8 now. It's a 9-month container. We wrap up in December and we'll start again in the new year. It's called Conscious Creators Collective. And it is a group of, this is our pioneer round. So a bunch of brave souls stepped up, because all I said was, this is an experiment experience. What we co-create together will be up to us as a collective, but we're going to do it consciously, knowing ourselves to be powerful creators. And in this 7 and a bit months, what has happened inside the group is nothing short of pure magic. And I don't mean, I mean like cosmic download, synchronistic, aligned magic.
Yeah. What are some of like the concrete celebrations that you could share from this 7-month group?
We had one woman sold her business and bought a resort center in another country. One woman started up her music career, which was about a 10-year hiatus. For everything from like big things, to differently big things. Like one woman just danced in on stage in a show, in this later part of her life, because it's like, what have you always wanted to do? Now is your time to do it. And you've got a whole sisterhood in this case, because we're all female, but it's open to others who are supporting you, celebrating you, and relentlessly cheering for what it is that you want to be in your authentic expression. Other women who are artists, who have done showing their art in art shows, to people recognizing that they're in relationships that aren't working for them anymore and haven't been for a long time, and gaining up the courage and the clarity to be able to do something with that information.
Mm-hmm. So through your 20 years of coaching, what have you found to be the common barrier that prevents people from loving themselves and for pursuing their win, I would say. So like all these things that you're saying, I'd classify those as wins. So just use that term for this question is yeah. So what are people? What is the common barrier you're seeing amongst your clients in the last 20 years that is getting in the way of people's self-love, and then also in the way of them pursuing their their inner calling, their win?
Yeah. So I would say it's a combination of it definitely has to do with how we view our worthiness as humans, and this lie that we are sold and buy wholeheartedly into, that it has to do with our accomplishments, that our accomplishments give us value rather than we are valuable and wonderful, and anything that we choose as our form of expression is the accomplishment that shows our value, not the other way around, right? We don't need to accomplish things to prove and earn our value. That what we put out into the world in our unique expression is evidence of our worthiness. And then the second thing I think is just buying into the monotony of everyday life, and like, this is all there is. And not even recognizing on a conscious level that we are, not meant to be these dinghies afloat on this ocean with no agency. That we are, our purpose here is to sail our own ship, right? That sort of Louisa May Alcott, I'm not afraid of the storms anymore because I'm learning to sail my own ship. The courage that it takes to stand at the helm. So that means looking at where you have been unconsciously living your life and not challenging the day in, day out mundane routine from which you're living. Is this what I want from my life? Right? We stop dreaming when we start accepting that this is all there is, and start getting into that robotic, right? With sort of like a purposelessness.
Yeah.
Going back to who we were as a child, like what were your dreams for yourself? That unadulterated childlike curiosity about life. What are the passions that we're pursuing? When we get on this treadmill and we forget that we are created in the image of our creator, right? We were created to create. That's the thing that we can do, that we're here to do. Anything that you see before you was created by someone's imagination.
Yeah.
So getting back in touch with what do you imagine for yourself? And then I have a course that comes up every January. It'll be my 9th year teaching it, I believe. And it's all about getting back in touch with that God spark of creation within you that you've suppressed, right? Or you thought was, oh, my ship has sailed, right? By the time my best years are over. I have women in this group that are in their 50s, 60s, reinventing themselves from a more authentic place, letting go of all those masks and living the life that they are truly here to live.
Mm-hmm. One question you mentioned was like, what did you love to do as a child? What were your dreams of a child? I'm sure there's clients of yours in the past who've forgotten. Um, what, how do you reignite that recall if you have forgotten that important question? Like, what did you love as a child? What sparked you up as a child? What were you passionate about as a
Mm-hmm.
child before your wounding, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's important. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, before your initial wound,
Mm-hmm.
um, what made you come alive?
Mm-hmm.
How do you refine that if it's lost or forgotten or suppressed?
Yeah. I think, well, one of this, it seems so trite, but a very easy way to do that, if you have available to you, look at pictures of yourself and or video of yourself when you were young. So for some people that's available. For me, no, because there was no camcorders or stuff back then. But just even understanding the essence of who you are. You know, are you a person that were you sort of like you love to be silly, you love to dress up, you love to put on plays for your aunts and uncles at Christmas? Were you singing all the time? For me, I know I probably spent half my waking hours upside down, walking on my hands, standing on my head, doing cartwheels. So I did personally keep the physicality, that part alive in me. Um, I think, you know, even just with this person that I was referring to earlier who danced on stage. I mean, that's a fruition of a life's dream that we got to witness and cheer her on in support of her being able to do that. Is that a career? No, but I think that's where people conflate this idea of our purpose has to make us money, right? Because we're in this, late stage capitalism and everything's you got to make money. But even just drawing, doodling, writing down words, putting them together in a form that you could call poetry or prose, what lights you up? Where do you get in your flow state? I get in my flow state in writing, like when I'm really into writing something and it just like the words pour out, right? So when you feel that feeling, that is you being in your purpose. And your purpose is not necessarily what, you're going to give to the world in the way that we, like I said, that equates to having a career. But what you are contributing to the world when you are in that flow state and in that place of, it is such a place of purity, right? When we feel it, it's like, oh, creative life force is just pulsating through us. That is the contribution to the world. Whether you publish it, whether you get up on a stage, whether you do it on a podcast, you are still contributing, because we are all connected in a vibrational umbilicus to the collective. So by donating that flow state energy and getting out of the mire of doomsday and shame, we're actually giving so much to that collective vibration that will help float everybody's boat higher.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing that we can do with our privileged position here.
Mm-hmm.
A massive contribution that should not be overlooked.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
let's hit a rewind on your journey to when you first became a coach. What did that look like when you transitioned to being a coach? Maybe it started off as part-time and then eventually you became a full-time coach. Yeah, like what did that look like? The journey from being that volleyball player then to that doctor's office and telling you and bringing to light that you have some shame to deal with, that you need to love yourself. How do you transition from that person to a full-time coach?
So So while I was going through, so I was a teacher, a high school teacher at the time, and I had just had my children, and I was trying to decide if I could go back to teaching, thinking to myself, this feels so wrong to give the best hours of my day to someone else's kids while my kids are at home with someone else.
Yeah.
And so, I recognized that as much as I loved teaching and especially coaching volleyball, and as much as I admire teachers so, so much and would have loved to be an amazing teacher for many more years, I felt that I was being called to do something different. And so in my pursuit of my own health, which was a bit of a journey, but it took me only a couple of years to get my health back on track and to reverse my autoimmune condition, which is important to say because I don't believe I did say that earlier. So after the doctor did all the testing, it took 2 years, 18 months for me to no longer test with antibodies. So I am living proof that autoimmune conditions can be reversed and even cured. And unfortunately, I don't believe that there's a lot of resources out there, especially in allopathic medicine, that want us to know that that's true. But I'm seeing more and more people being able to do that every day. So for me, I started to want to educate myself. I went to a doctor here and I asked, what can I do for this? And they handed me a prescription. And I said, no, like I'm willing to do anything I need to change my diet, do like whatever. And all they did was pass that prescription back over. So I went home and I started researching what does that medication do? And it leads to a lifetime of osteoporosis because it leaches minerals from the bone matrix. And it suppresses the thyroid so that it does the work for the thyroid, eventually rendering the thyroid completely useless. It can no longer produce the hormones that it needs to. So, at the time I was, I think almost 30. Yeah, I would have been, 30. And I was just like, this feels wrong. So I started researching. My research led to the nutritional component. Meanwhile, I'm working with this doctor, so he's helping me, recognizing that there were certain foods that were wreaking havoc on my body. So I got a registered holistic nutrition certification. I had a phys ed degree from university, went and got a personal training certification just to sort of top that up as well, and started working with people at a naturopathic clinic as a health and wellness lifestyle coach is what they called me. So making programs for people, which I still do today. But in the time that I spent there, I probably saw 400 patients for nutritional purposes and fitness. And I recognized this isn't about the food. The food is symptomatic about the way that people perceive themselves and their own self-worth. It is about our relationship to ourself and how the symptom of our relationship to food reflects our relationship to ourself. Mm-hmm. And so I started to just work with people in that. And then after a while, I recognized that this is about how do you love yourself again? He was right. That one question is the way into understanding all of our disease. So I started branching out and working on my own and called myself a self-love coach. Now this is 17, 18 years ago. People laughed in my face. I was the first person that I know that was calling themselves a self-love coach. So I not only said, this is it, but I had to explain to people why that was so that they even recognize the value of what I was trying to do. Well, now there's self-love coaches everywhere. And although that will always be what I do, I believe that it's morphed into an even more sophisticated way of looking at it, which is not only just learning to love ourselves, but that idea of gnosis and needing to know ourselves and love everything about this being as we've come to be incarnated here, and all of the influences that have created who we are, and just loving and accepting that. So it's been a journey, 20 years.
Yeah.
But incredibly rewarding.
Was there any resistance in quitting teaching to pursue this like calling you've had in your heart? One of my favorite authors, Stephen Pressfield, he talks about resistance as that negative force in that world that prevents us from fulfilling our dreams. Did resistance rear itself in that part of your journey? And how does it continue to rear its head today? Because it's inescapable, and that resistance is the thing that tries to keep us safe, keep us in our known world, keep us in our comfort zone. So yeah, how do you deal with that resistance then and now?
Yeah, that is so well said. And truly, you're right. It does never go away. And I believe, as somebody who's chosen to be an entrepreneur, so chosen to, it's all on me, right? Obviously, we have the helpers. Obviously, we have community, but there is something very lone wolf about choosing to be responsible for your own income. And there's you bump up against resistance every single day in this kind of work. One of the reasons that I feel, and it's not that I feel duty bound so much as I feel a deep sense of responsibility to the people that I work with, that I am doing the work too, relentlessly, right? That I'm not stopping because the going gets tough. And that, resistance is fertile, because in it, there's so much you can learn about yourself. You're a Joseph Campbell fan, because obviously the whole hero's journey thing. And one of my favorite quotes by him is, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek." Right? We are here to slay the dragons. The dragon is our own self and our own fear. And in that, like, not even just slaying, but integrating the dragon, that we recognize that was the thing that we needed to prove in order to earn that treasure that's on the other side. So that, repeating that little mythology within oneself day after day, every time these things rear their ugly heads, it's what a exciting journey. So there's a lot of reframing about it, and also just embracing that it's never going to be easy. We didn't choose easy. We chose to come here. We chose to be in this dimensional reality because there are things that we have to conquer and come up against and show our mettle and prove ourselves. And it feels good to our soul. That's why the hero's journey repeats. We think we've arrived. Haha, not so fast, right? You're back in. Yeah.
So you mentioned doing the work, and I also think it's not only doing, but it's also being in the work. It's embodying that as who you are. What does doing the work look like for you today? The foundations to your personal self-love practice.
I love that. So there's a tremendous amount of inner conversation and like inner dialoguing with myself, and being aware of the amount of self-forgiveness that I continue to need to apply to the places that hurt inside of me. I try to be conscious in the choices that I make about what goes into my body, because I believe, from the level of the cell to the level of the soul, it's all the same thing. It is the definition of as within, so without, the cell being the microcosm for the soul, which is the macrocosm of it all. And so keep trying to keep the vessel as clean as possible, including thought forms, including what I let in. I haven't always been great with, some of the things that I intake. So then it's like, okay, let's get honest with ourselves and do an audit again. What is serving me? What's not? And being willing to be honest, because if you are, then you can get rid of the things that are not serving you. But if you're continuing to stay, as we all love to as humans, in sort of this illusion, right? Oh, that's not a big deal, right? And looking at everything that we ingest and digest becomes part of us.
Mm-hmm.
So how can you operate with self-love, with the love of yourself? Because this is what you have control over. And then I take my having fun very, very seriously, in that I think it's really important to go out and especially be around dancing, live music, places that light you up, places where you can have fun and let loose and be yourself. Some people love to do that on a yoga mat. Some people love to do that on a dance floor, to each their own. But just this idea of getting out, expressing yourself, having a good time, like prioritize your pleasure, prioritize your enjoyment. You have the life that you have, and not everyone does. So to sit and sort of pretend to suffer along is not actually serving anybody. Go out and celebrate and live your life to the fullest as the greatest act of rebellion to any powers that be that would want to suppress what it means to be human. It reminds me of that in the movie The Matrix, right? When they're in Zion and they're all just dancing and having a good time. And I used to think, I don't know. I don't think we're going to party our way out of this one. But I do think that there's an element of that necessity to move our body and to dance and to emote and enjoy this embodiment that is a massive part of that healing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I know it was for me.
One thing you mentioned is you are very conscious of the things you intake, not only food, but this includes media, and you have a big presence in the social media world. How do you balance that? Things have changed in the last 20 years. Like that wasn't around when this journey began. And I feel social media can be a tool, but it also could be an extreme detrimental force in an individual and the collective. So how have you learned to balance that tool?
Such an important question. And I don't know if I've always done it well, but I do feel like in the last since let's put it this way, since I have recognized how much it matters, I have attempted to be impeccable with the message that's coming through, that only transmissions from the heart. So being in that space of, I won't say anything that is not in complete integrity with who I am. That will and not that there's ever any intention, but there's no intention whatsoever to harm, but there is intention sometimes to rattle the cage. And to some people that are enslaved or in that cage of their own perceptions, it feels like harm, but it's not. It's the greatest kindness to rattle someone's cage so that they can go, oh, wow, I'm in a cage, right? Or they might detest you for it, and that's cool too, because they're each on their own journey. And I never go out trying to target that, but I mean, like, even my relationship with social media right now feels very, very tenuous, because there's been a lot of attempts to cancel me or to intimidate me. And like I said, I will not say anything that doesn't come from the purest place that is sourced from my heart. And if there, it's interesting because I think I said this earlier in this conversation, I won't say something unless it has some kind of benefit. And I can almost see the person that it's meant for, or the people that it's meant for, reading it and feeling like they can go on another day, or like they're not crazy, or like, you know, it's laced with hope.
Yeah.
And truth. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Earlier on in your journey, you were more reluctant to receive help. You were kind of adverse to helpers. You wanted to do it on your own, but of course, we cannot do this on our own. And throughout your journey, there's been many helpers, allies, influences, inspirations on your path. So just take a moment to acknowledge some of the notable ones. Who were they, and what were the key takeaways that you've learned from them that you've incorporated into who you are?
Oh, you're gonna make me cry. Oh, I'm actually not opposed to crying either. So just so that everybody knows, I'm cool with it. So if you're willing to accept all of me, then um and this is again one of those shame things, right? Is like I have experienced a lot of shame for my emotionality. And I now have come to recognize that it is the most beautiful thing about me. So um my dad, absolutely instrumental in, you know, he was a man who was relentlessly positive, and not like spiritual bypassing toxic positivity. Like, this was a man that was even willing to look evil in the face because he knew the light within him was stronger. So massive, massive influence on my life. And it's interesting, he passed away last year, and I feel that like um when someone that you love like that goes to the other side, you have access to them in a completely different way. And he is so present because I had to look at myself yet again and recognize that I am David's daughter. I chose as a soul to come into this world with him as my father so that I could learn the lessons that I needed to learn,
Mm-hmm.
in order to, you know, to be able to have success in the curriculum that is my soul's journey in this lifetime. And I can say that I truly get why I chose him. And when he passed, I can honestly say that that soul and my soul have no more karma. We're complete. And what a gift, because I think very few people can say that, or will at the end of their days be able to say that about one parent or the other, or even both. So it's a, you know, it's a beautiful thing. And I feel like he gave me my will. He ignited in me, you know, that it's being strong-willed is not, you know, what we want to train out of a child, because that will is going to serve them very well when they're older. And you can have all the loving in the world, which my community tends to make the focus, and I understand why. But if we do not also have the will, right, have our will and our love married, we
Uh-huh.
can't. The love opens the door, but the will walks us through it.
Uh,
So to have that level of determination, that's what my dad taught me. And then I called him my second father, and that was one of my volleyball coaches. He was my high school volleyball coach. And he was the same. He had a very, very high standard, but he never left us without support to meet that standard. And if there's one thing that I embody in my coaching, is I will never pity you. I will never look upon you as a victim, because I will never see you that way. I will hold you here until you figure out that you are this, and rise up to meet it. And that's the thing that I've learned from those two instrumental men in my life. My dad and my coach, Larry Ethie, who's also since gone on to the other side.
I'm very curious about this will. The heart, love is not enough, or I don't know if that's the right word, but
it's not the end of the story.
It's not the end of the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, will is also important. How does one strengthen one's will?
You know, I'm a big believer in the physical body helps us to create that inner world too. And that we have to set up situations where we are made uncomfortable in our physical body. So that means sometimes we do have to be the master of this domain, right? Sometimes we do have to make those choices that are not always in the pursuit of comfort, so that we can train ourselves to know that we have a mental toughness or a will that can supersede the feeling of pain that we have. Now, I'm not saying like that we need to break our backs, but I do believe that when we train physical with weights for marathons, different things like that, that we are training our will via the body. Yoga is the same thing. You know, I was a big fan of the 26 postures, because there is something in there that awakens that bulldog determination, right? And I think that is a source within that we rarely tap into unless we can consider ourselves an athlete. Everyone has a will, and everyone needs to work that will in order to know our power. That doesn't mean go like sign up for a marathon. That means that find something that you want to have mastery over, that you feel has mastery over you right now. Like, simple one, I gave up coffee a few years ago because I was like, I don't know if I want to be addicted to anything. And I was waking up hoping, you know, someone would pour coffee in my mouth so I could wake up. It's like, okay, there's something that needs to be looked at there, right? That happened to be one for me. Years and years ago, I ran a marathon because I'm not good at running. I'm like, I don't know if I'm not good at it or if this is a perception that I have and I've never trained that. And I'm wondering if I did the work over these next 18 months or whatever it was to lead up to that 9 months, that I would be able to run a marathon, right? So little things like this, those are big things, but starting with some little things. Can you wake up at a certain time every day? Can you commit to something? And the more we restore that relationship of trust with ourselves, day to day, I am the person that does what I say I will do. We're training our will. Will has a major component of self-trust. I am a person of my word. I have integrity. When I say something, I do it. Yeah.
You mentioned your sons earlier and how you take great pride in watching them play volleyball. What's something that you wish to teach them, or what you wish that they receive, that they know, that you wish you would have had at that age? Yeah, that's what's something you're trying to teach them or expose them to, that you wish you would have had that knowledge at that age.
I would want them to know the point I made earlier, but then another one as well, that their value is not based on the outcome. Their value is based on the pursuit and the participation and thrusting oneself fully into an experience, right? And the second part would be, I would want them to know that he who has the most fun wins, because we are commoditizing sport, and we are commoditizing children in sport. And, everything has become what can this do for either your social media profile or your bank account, rather than what do you love about this? How does it light you up? Can you go out there and have fun? And I think there's different ways of having fun, because I think we can have fun with self-mastery and going, oh my gosh, look at how I'm getting better day and day. Did you see that great play that I made? How exciting. Versus, this, what are your stats? So it's less about the quantitative and more about the qualitative enjoyment and pleasure of sport.
Uh-huh.
And that it'll lead where it leads,
Mm-hmm.
just with a different impetus.
It'll open doors that otherwise wouldn't have been perceived.
Yeah, for sure.
It's another Joseph Campbell quote. You mentioned a Joseph Campbell quote earlier about the cave. Let's go to that mouth of that cave. I like to call it the crossroads of should and must. And in this picture, I hear a fellow being, a fellow human, standing at that crossroads. The must is entering that cave. That's the calling in their heart. That's their intuition. Something deeper than our knowing wants them to enter that cave. But the conditioning, the programming from school, culture, media, parents are pulling them to that road of should. What advice would you have for this fellow traveler standing at the mouth of the cave, wanting to leap, but feeling that pull, that external pull from all those external forces that I mentioned, keeping them stuck on that path or stuck at that crossroads of inaction?
Well, a couple of things. No one's ever asked me this question before, so it's really brilliant. I'm taking a moment just to make sure that I really digest it, and what comes out is from my heart. And that, I would say, the longer we spend, we know what we are to do. We spend a lot of time lying to ourselves, and that's where our suffering occurs. So the longer you wait and stare into the abyss, not knowing, right, whether it's the right thing, the fact that it's in front of you in your life means that it is the right thing. And it's very likely that it'll come around again and again in different incarnations, or even the same. And the time that you spend not going for it is time wasted in suffering. It takes a tremendous amount of courage, but the truth of this life is what is for you is for you. And I have so many clients that come to me at that very crossroads. They don't know what to do. And I just say to them, trust yourself, because whichever you choose, you will make that the right decision. And they know deep down inside that what they choose is, if you flipped a coin and you had to say heads or tails, heads means you do the must and tails means you do the should, you'll know when you flip that coin whether you're hoping for heads or tails. And in that brief moment where your subconscious kicks in and is telling you, girl, do it, before your conscious brain rushes in to try to protect and save, and the ego is like, stay small, don't try to do crazy, right? That unreasonableness has a moment to pull at your skirt or pull at your hair or your ear. And that is what you got to go with.
Well
and if
said.
one doesn't do it right then, it'll come back again. But in the meantime, you will suffer. So you're responsible for your own suffering. That's a hard pill to swallow. So the quicker we can trust our intuition and our instincts and go, this is for me, it's in front of me, it's for a reason, right?
You've been spending the last 20 years is really becoming a master of self-love. What have you learned from this journey? What does love mean to you, Natalie?
Hmm. Um, I believe that it is a verb more than a noun. I think it's nothing if it's not put into action, if it's not demonstrated to self and to the world. You know, and even just this talk of self-love, I never want to leave that ambiguous either, because many people hear narcissism when they hear self-love. They conflate the two. And in my world and in my experience, learning to love myself is how I finally got over myself. We are obsessed with our own ness when we don't love ourselves. But it's the loving ourselves that allows us to drop all that other stuff and then show up in unconditional love for others too. Because we're all in this together, and we are all either, A Course in Miracles says, every communication is either a cry for love or an expression of love. Period. Right?
Yes.
Only those two things. So when I think of it that way, it's like we are being asked in this time, when there's so much hate and violence, to love like we have never loved before. And that is done not just through the thought of, oh, you know, I wish peace, but to be a demonstration of peace to those that we meet. So it starts with this inner circle, the cell, the smallest inner circle possible, right? The community of cells, which is the body, the person that you're in front of face to face every day, the people that their sphere of influence will affect. We think that we're so powerless and so limited, but we're actually so connected that if one person starts to be that, right, the light always conquers darkness.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But the light has to be willing to show itself.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that's
That's
done
that's done what, sorry?
through love, through demonstrating love. Yeah.
And that
Loving
starts
action.
now.
Yeah.
And that starts now.
Right now.
And right now, again and again and again. And it just could be little things. It could just be taking a deeper breath. It could be being present. It could be a bit more compassionate to the self. Um, Little things.
Yeah.
Those little things become big things. The small shifts become a great change in time.
Mm-hmm.
Every interview, I have a final few questions, and we've gotten to that point. They're all pretty hefty questions. This first one start us off on that note. Through all the highs and lows, that is this hero's journey, that is this life experience, that is this reality of now. What has been the greatest life lesson that you've learned on your path, that in this moment you feel most true to you and that you wish to share?
Wow, that's quite a question. Like, how do you eat an elephant? Um, that feels like such a it's the most existential question, right? And I do feel like in every way with what I've said today, I've answered that. And I feel that to summarize it would be that there is no work outside of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That you were given this costume, you were given this reality to make of it what you will, and that there is no point in doing it for selfish, self-serving reasons, but you can't do it for other people. You can only do it for yourself. So you serve the world by working on your own internal world.
Uh,
This is where the work is for you.
yeah, we get to.
Yeah.
In 3 words, how would you describe the experience you're having on this earth? It doesn't have to be a sentence, but just 3 separate words. How would you describe the experience you're having on this earth? And you can elaborate on those words if you feel called.
Wow. That wasn't one of them, but wow, that's a like,
It could be one.
these are actually such fun questions. I'm so excited to even be asked these questions because it's like, oh, wow. Okay. So, um, I'll go back to the world or the word creation or creator.
Mm-hmm.
And important to me because I think once we step into full recognition of our powers of creation, then the game really starts. And we're really going to see some massive remembering going on. I would add to that gratitude, because, you know, that's the secret sauce to everything, right? See the beauty, be grateful for it, and you get more of what you're grateful for. And then, I think I like the word. I know it's used a whole lot, but I still love the word sovereignty. And I think that's another word that I want to reclaim. On Instagram, I was blonde sovereign since I think 2010 or something, since Instagram started. And then through the last few years, that term has taken on a bit of a distortion. And I still keep that name because it doesn't mean that to me. It means ruler of self, responsible for oneself. I am the sovereign of my domain. I am the benevolent ruler of my own life.
Mm-hmm.
And with that comes self-responsibility, which is a beautiful thing, and which is a thing that's very feared, right? Because we love to blame. But in my world, the way that I say it is if you blame, you don't bloom. So taking back ownership and responsibility of the self is what I mean by sovereign. Your choices, the way you perceive, the way you're affecting that which you perceive in the quantum reality. So those would be my 3.
Thank you. Sovereign, gratitude, and creator. Great, those are some great words to describe the experience you're having on this earth.
Mm-hmm.
Final question. We played around with time. We've examined your past, we've examined your present, and let's get into the future. Let's fast forward. Let's fast forward to a time quite far from now, and we're going to be alongside an 85-year-old Natalie Reimer Anderson. Who is this 85-year-old woman? Where are you? Who are you surrounded by? What is the legacy that you left in your 85 years? And what are the predominant feelings in your body?
Wow. Wow. What a beautiful question. I'll start with the predominant feelings. I think it'll just be like sort of this idea of the intersection between service and fun. I feel like it's already a space where I've staked my flag and claimed, that's like Venn diagram of service and fun, and where they overlap that's the pocket that I want to exist in. Because we're here to enjoy our life, but we're here to do it as service to the greater. And I think that I love playing with our limitlessness as humans. So I expect at 85 I will be even more healthy. Like, I'm healthier now than I was when I was a professional athlete. And that was 30 years ago, between 25 and 30 years ago. Because I continue to pursue knowledge and I continue to leave those things behind that aren't serving me. And one of the things that I'm working on now, and I hope that this will be a reality for me in my future, is just, you know, the raising of the Christos or the Kundalini, to the point that, you know, we all have the ability to access at will the Akashic record and everything else that is beyond the veils of what we can perceive and see. Because I'm a big believer. I know I've felt it. I've witnessed and experienced it, that there is more than, how does Shakespeare put it, more to heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophies. There is so much more out there that we're just beginning to scratch the surface of. And so, you know, who we are as beings, I want to keep exploring that and keep pushing beyond the limits of, this is a great question, because age is a big one right now. Age and our bodies, and I'm a person that healed an autoimmune condition. Try to tell me that we can't heal our own bodies, right? We absolutely can. I believe that disease is what's foreign to us. That's the lie we've bought. But it's going to be a while before humanity gets there, unless we reach a critical mass and that tipping point occurs, and I'm here for it. It's part of my work.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So let's stay with this woman, this 85-year-old woman, just a moment longer. She's the master of the intersection between service and fun. She's healthy, she's vibrant, and she's left her impact and helped so many people love themselves. And I'm going to bring us back to the present day. And that 85-year-old woman, she sends a message to you now. What does that 85-year-old woman whisper in your ear?
I don't think there's anything else that she would need to say except, you know, because I think that is the truth of it, is deep down inside, if we're being honest with ourselves, right to the core, we do know. And everything else is those protective mechanisms you talked about, the societal mind control, adulteration, you know, whatever you want to call it, and the masks from these different experiences, these survival adaptations that we've made. But the soul knows. So she would say something like, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. You do know, and thank you so much for sharing everything that you know with me, with everyone tuning in to this conversation. For people wanting to connect with you further, they can find you on your website, nataliereimeranderson.com, where you have many amazing programs and your coaching services available for people interested. And then, as you mentioned, you're also on Instagram at Blonde Sovereign. Anywhere else to send them, or any last words that you'd like to say?
I feel what I love to do is have a conversation, get a conversation started with somebody, and let them experience that sense of deep listening and being seen and heard, and the healing that can happen, the spontaneous healing that can happen when that occurs. So if you feel called and you feel like this feels like something I need to talk more about, you can send me a message, either hello@nataliereimeranderson.com. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. I check all of those regularly. So feel free to reach out, because I'm just a person and I've just gone through my own journey. And that's how I like to do it. It's not fancy. It's just human to human. Let's figure some of this stuff out together.
Beautiful. To close every conversation, we bring our fist in for a digital fist bump, stepping into the winner's circle.
Yay.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor to connect
Thank
with
you.
you and to hear and share your story.
Thanks,
Blessings.
Derek. Thanks for the work you're doing.
Yes, thank you.